CFB Paint back in the house. Week 3 review, Week 4 preview. Corey is back, and Tanner?
Yeah, more or less.
Thrilled to have you back. You didn't miss much from from the solo episode last week. You did miss a fair amount, or I guess you didn't really. It sounds like you were able to catch up pretty well on Week 3. Any big takeaways from you?
Yeah, I got off the boat at 8 a.m. We went to the beach for a little bit, and then I had the phone in the back saying, "Kids, don't talk to me. I'm watching football." Thoughts from
Decompress.
this week. Every ranked team wins this week, but we have some people that flirt with disaster. A little bit Missouri, a little bit of Georgia, a little bit of Utah, but everybody in the end pulls through. So, fun week. I think you only had one large ranked matchup. You had with Missouri and Boston College. Oh, you did have Arizona and Kansas State.
Arizona and Kansas State. That's right.
But yeah, fun week to watch. I'm interested to see when we start having these teams playing real teams, which I don't think happens next week. I think we got to go week 4 or 5. There's a bunch of teams like we're going to probably talk about a little bit later. I don't know who they are, and there's teams like I'm like, oh, I know who this team is. So I'm interested to see how that goes.
Yeah, I feel like every time there's like a quiet week of college football, and like there's always something that pulls you in. Whether you liked the slugfest that was Georgia, Kentucky, I'll give you the one that really had our attention in our house was the UCF TCU game, where UCF comes back from down 21 points in the second half to win the game. And it's not over until it's over, because in the course of that game, TCU blocked 2 extra points and a field goal attempt from UCF. So they score what in theory is the game-winning touchdown, because an extra point will put them 1 point ahead with, I can't remember, like 18 seconds left, some minuscule amount of time. But it's like, this isn't over. They have to, like, do not take this extra point for granted, because they've had 3 kicks blocked today. So that one was just wild and very fun at the second half there. Wow. That was our big kind of, all right, every time there's a sleepy Saturday, there's always something lurking for you there, and it's always just try and find it. So, but we did take advantage of it. We did go and we went to Cabela's so our little girl could see the fish, and so I could reject some sort of timeshare offer that was in the store. Anyway, what were you saying?
Oh, you also had the news of the Pac-12 expanding.
True.
They were with Washington State and Oregon State, being able to retain the Pac-12 name and owner rights. They ended up inheriting like $250 million of assets and have picked up 4 new teams. Fresno State. Fresno State.
All the states: Fresno State,
Colorado
San
State.
Diego State, Colorado State, and
Boise State.
Boise State. Yeah.
I think there's talk that they might go after Memphis and UTSA. When you're able to buy these teams, I think they're buying these 4 teams for like anywhere from like $76 million to $114 million from the Mountain West.
Yeah.
All right, that's only half your treasure chest. You can basically build a new Pac-12 essentially.
Yeah, I would wonder how much you would do that, and how much you might just be able to distribute to them, saying hey, or maybe you hold some of that in your coffers. And if I'm the commissioner, that's what I'm trying to play commissioner. I like your thoughts of hey, we can pick up these ones. You might, I don't know. I don't want to sit here and lie, but there's a couple things that I would consider doing. One's could we just hold some of that and invest it until athletes get employee status, and then we pay it out and say hey, here's your NIL fund for the next 3 years. Let's really make a run at this and become that Power 5 conference.
That'd be interesting.
I think, yeah, it's where it's hey, we're going to evenly distribute it, but we're going to make sure that we're trying to be as competitive as possible with the other Power 5 conferences. Also, in that same vein, that's a good group of teams. I think that's a really good starting point. For what's out there, right? You can't, it is what it is. They've been dealt a pretty tough hand, but Washington State winning the Apple Cup in Seattle, Boise State, for all intents and purposes, probably should have beat Oregon. You've got some cachet, and I think it was a good time to announce it like, hey, look, we're going toe to toe with the upper crust of some of these other leagues. I guess I wouldn't call Washington the upper crust of the Big Ten right now, but like, so that part. But with Oregon, they're what, co-favorites, maybe slightly at this point in the season. Maybe they're slightly not the favorite to Ohio State. I haven't really checked any updated futures on that, but I think that there's a way for them to frame this as, hey, we're the West Coast's actual conference. And I think that there's going to be opportunities for them to make a name for themselves. I mean, I would look at Texas State pretty heavily too, especially how closely they played Arizona State. Again, another one you could probably argue they should have won the game. Yeah, I'm excited to see this. I'm thrilled to have it. I think those are compelling enough matchups that I will stay up late to watch them late at night, if that
Yep,
makes sense. Yeah,
I would.
cool. Yeah, I've got a couple of games that I want to touch on. I actually just already touched on one there. Texas State, I love what they're doing. Arizona State, really like what they're doing too. Man, that's a fun team to watch. They play hard. I think we mentioned that right from the get go when Dillingham got there. We knew it was kind of a pretty bare cupboard when it came to talent, but man, they fought hard. Last year, I don't know if you'll remember, they took USC to the brink. This is before USC
Mm-hmm.
became 7-5. They were kind of widely expected to win the Pac-12 championship. They had got to the Pac-12 championship game the year prior. Everyone kind of thought, okay, this is the year they could get over the hump. And their first real test was Arizona State early in the season last year. And it's like, Dillingham's boys will fight hard. Like, they play hard for him. They weren't very good, but I think they're getting better. Are they bowling this year? I think they might.
I put money on it, to be honest.
Yeah.
You're already 3-0.
Yeah, you're halfway there, right? Like, and I don't think that the Big 12 looks quite as daunting as it might have. Even some of the favorites have looked a little shaky in there. I think, including your in-state rivals, the Arizona Wildcats. As much as I have loved watching them, there's some holes there. There's opportunities. I don't know. I'm interested to watch that one going forward, but just wanted to give a quick tip of my cap to the Arizona State Sun Devils in both our group for win totals, but also within my win totals group with my in-laws. I have Texas State, so I watched every second of that game. Fun game, back and forth. Yeah, no, that's the part where I just love college football because it's, for lack of a better term, it feels purer than maybe like the highest levels of the sport right now, where it's it's those that are, I feel like, are slightly on a more even playing field, and you can kind of see the passion of the fan bases and what it takes to build a program at a place that maybe doesn't have all of the resources or advantages. Any other thoughts on that one? I can keep going.
I'm just rooting for the Fighting King Dillinghams, because I like
Yeah,
him.
dilly,
Yeah,
the
and
old
it looks like they found a quarterback pretty
dilly.
I'm impressed with what they're doing. So
Yeah,
yeah,
Levitt's an athlete. He's fun. Scatterboo, the running back, is a tough guy to bring down. Yeah, they're a fun team to watch. Uh, Also, in those midweek games, I think we talked about this, or I talked about this is probably the better way of saying it, last week. But yeah, there's some fun matchups. UNLV, Kansas, close game. UNLV, man, they've had quite a little run here, and I am forgetting. Is it Brendan Marion? Is their offensive coordinator?
I
Who's going
can't
to
tell you.
be?
You're the
He's
offensive
going
coordinator.
places. That's all I'm saying. He's going places. Like, they are doing so well. I like Barry Odom too, but I think a big part of their success is what they've been able to do offensively. Um, yeah, and Kansas, I don't know.
I'm nervous about that pick. I have it on
Yeah,
my offense totals left. I'm like, okay, you've dropped two games that I did not expect you to drop. Like you first to Illinois and then second to UNLV. Come on.
yeah. We'll have to see how it plays out, but that one's one that I may be a little suspicious of. Uh, UJ Kentucky, I'm going to tip my cap to Brock Vandegrift. Like, I don't think he's a stellar player, but man, it's fun to see him go run around, and you could tell he was motivated for this one, playing his former team. A couple times felt like he had to pull rabbits out of the hat to avoid the rush, and was pretty productive on that. It was just one of those things where it's like, how long can he keep keep just narrowly escaping sacks and keep the chains moving. I think ultimately, 12 points was never going to do it. Like you need
Nah,
more. But there is something to it. It's interesting that like I think it's 3 of the last 4 years Kentucky has held Georgia to under 17 points. Like they have their number. I don't know why. I don't know if I have a good answer for what they're doing that does that, but they are locked in when they play the Bulldogs from a defensive standpoint. They just need to find another way to manufacture a few more points of their own.
I was watching like 3 or 4 other games at the time, and I saw the score. I was like, "Oh, it's 9-6." Like I knew Kentucky was winning in the third quarter. And I was like, "Well, we'll check it in the fourth quarter." And right then it was like, "All right," it got to 13. I think got 13-9. I'm like, "All right, Georgia's fine. I'm gonna win," because Georgia's done this now 3 years running. They're gonna flirt
Yeah.
with somebody they shouldn't beat, and just because they shouldn't lose to, sorry, and just because they have so much more talent, they can sleepwalk through a game. Like and it's we're coming up on this September, October. They are kind of just zombies until it's time to wake up when it matters. So
Yeah, the one thing I would say on that, I can't remember exactly the time, and I feel like other people have already said this, but I said it in the moment, so I want credit for it. My wife will be my witness. Like, I think it was 4th and 8 or 4th and 13, with like 2.5 minutes left,
and they
somewhere in
punt.
that neighborhood, and they punt, and I was like, "You're not going to get the ball back." Like,
No,
and so like I was as they were trotting out, I was just leaning over to my wife. I was like, "I want to make a point. He's making the wrong decision here. He's going to kick the ball to him. I know he has timeouts. It's not going to matter.
yeah,
Um, this is the game. You got to find a way to do this one, even if it's like, hey, we're going to go hunting for a pass interference call. Like, go do that. Like, I feel
yeah,
like, especially officials nowadays, like, I would have a play where it's like, hey, we're running 4 verts and everyone knows the ball's going to be underthrown. Like, so just go and then run and jump into the defensive back who's running to try and keep up with you. Dive into him. The ball's underthrown 15 yards and we have a first down.
that's a very Belichickian way to handle it. I don't know if you ever seen him call the punt play where he's like, "Everybody hold for 10 minutes, for 10 seconds. Everybody hold, and then we'll punt the ball."
Yep. Yep.
Like I think that's a great strategy.
Or where you like got like the false start on purpose to run the clock down when the rules were different, and he like couldn't even stop giggling on the sideline. He was just like, I can't believe this is working. Like, but yeah, I would go and do something like that. Have something like that where maybe one half of the field is like more of a designed route tree, and the other half's like go find a defensive holding or go find a pass interference.
You just got to hope
Anyway,
you can keep, you know, Georgia out of your backfield because they were in the backfield constantly with them. So that'd be the one thing I'd be worried about.
yeah, I'm surprised that it didn't end up costing them more in terms of turnover. Like again, Vandegrift, that's where he earned a lot of my respect. It was like, wow, I think I knew he was like reasonably athletic. I thought he did a pretty good job of avoiding the rush almost all night. Like I know that I think he
You
did
have the
take a
one,
couple of sacks, but
yeah, he had a
um,
fumble behind him that led to a field goal early on and kind of
okay, I can't. Yeah,
got
I was
Georgia
gonna.
in the game. Yeah,
Okay, so yeah, maybe I missed that one, but I mean, just based on the week prior where South Carolina just ate Kentucky's lunch with their defensive line. I expected it to be much worse, and it wasn't. So um, I don't know if I had anything else on that game. Again, like well done, Wildcats kept it close, but that's kind of been their mo against Georgia for the last 3 years.
and also Georgia's probably looking forward to Alabama. I think they got a week off this next week, and then I think they play Bama next. So
That sounds right. Yeah.
if they're Steven, they probably snuck some extra time to prep it for Alabama, even though they had a week.
Yeah. I mean, why not? Why not? Two weeks is maybe enough time for Bama, but who knows? Um, maybe we move that one up. Speaking of Bama, they went and they didn't jump around Wisconsin. They jumped all over them. And I don't know if I have like a ton of big takeaways, but I think that it's getting dialed in is kind of my answer there. Kalen DeBoer's figuring out what he's got to work with, what what his offensive personnel is and is not, and then calling a game to accentuate their strengths.
And that's I think you nailed this nailed it on the head right there. It's like Kevin DeBoer doesn't say, "All right, I need the players to fit my system." He's like, "I'm going to adjust my system or adjust what I'm calling to fit my players and my personnel." And granted, Tyler Van Dyke went out early in this one. I would have liked to see how this going. I think he was like 3-0 or something like that, or when Tyler Van Dyke went out.
It
So
was early. I can't remember exactly what the score was. Game was not out of hand by
yeah,
any stretch.
and I would have liked to see Van Dyke play in that game to see what kind of test he could have done. I don't think Wisconsin has the talent to hang around with Alabama. But you know, and just in case you guys didn't catch it on any other Alabama shows, Ryan Williams is only 17 years old.
That's the new yeah.
Golden
That's the new
Cub
talking point.
comment.
Yeah. The Nick O'Leary is Jack Nicklaus's grandson, or in Zach Wilson's big year in 2020 that he drove to California every weekend to go and train with John Beck. Like there's always that one talking point that every crew maybe just doesn't realize, like, oh no, everyone who's broadcast a game for them has highlighted this. You don't need to bring it up. Um, yeah, I think Bama is. Yeah, I'm excited to see that game. Bama versus, is Bama also off next week? I don't remember. They both get bye weeks
Don't
in
think so. I
anticipation of
think
that.
Bama plays one game next week. Let me check.
Let's check here. I can
No,
look it
Bama's
up.
off next week. They play Georgia. Maybe I messed it up.
So yeah, both of them have bye weeks. All right. Well, yeah, calm before the storm when it comes to that one. A couple of other SEC games I wanted to talk through. Talk through. Some of them are quick. Texas. This is what I'll say with the Longhorns taking care of business against UTSA. This is not your father's Manning quarterback. You see that run from Arch, like
the 67-yard run.
Yeah, I think he was quoted saying, like, I attribute my speed to my mom's side, not my dad's side.
I saw a stat that compared his longest touchdown run to Eli's longest touchdown run and to Peyton's longest. I think Peyton Manning ran it for 13 yards. Eli ran for 15 yards for a touchdown, and then he got a 67-yarder.
Moving. That was really impressive. That was something I did not realize. Like, I got like that whole Shaq meme. I have to apologize. I was not familiar with your game. Like, I didn't know he had that in the tank either. Like, really hadn't seen any highlights other than him like sort of scrambling within the pocket, which again I don't think gave me a good sense of, like, no, his straight line speed is actually really like serviceable, right? Like I don't know if I'd call him like blazing fast, but eye opening to me. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
That was really all I had about that game. I didn't really watch too much of it. I know that they were up, and apparently Quinn is week to week. For my money, I don't know if it matters who you're starting at quarterback there. I think that they're going to be just fine.
It doesn't. I know there's talk of like Heisman talk about Archie. Come on, but I think you got 2-3 weeks before you even play anybody actually on the Texas schedule. So let him sit. Let him get back to the healthy. Manning's fully capable of running the offense. I do feel like this Texas team is kind of a little bit on cruise control a little bit. And when that happens, I feel like Sark's always kind of due. I've kind of been an anti-Sark fan in the past, and I'm starting to believe in Sark. I feel like they might be due for a trip-up game soon, that they might struggle with somebody. So I'm interested to see how they do in the next few weeks. I'll pull up the schedule real quick and see who they've got. I know that they've got easy games.
Yeah, it's. I think that's something than a bye, and then Oklahoma, something like that.
I'm looking at it real fast.
I don't think Oklahoma's that is gonna trip them up again. Do you?
I don't think Oklahoma will. It's UL Monroe, Mississippi State, Oklahoma, then Georgia. I wonder if UL Monroe, Mississippi State, like, those are not good teams, but I wonder if one of them gives them a little bit harder time and they don't win this. They've been winning their games like, 52-0, 31-12 against a decent Michigan team, 56. I wonder if one of those UL Monroe games ends up being like in the 20s, or UL Monroe, Mississippi State ends up being in the 20s, and they're just like, oh, can't quite get it working, and
they 20s in like the spread, right?
20s is kind of like they score 20 points and they end up winning the game, 28-7, because Texas has good defense. But I just wonder if they have a little stumble game at some point in time.
Yeah, we'll have to see. If not, I'm pretty close to saying anointing, like, hey, Texas is that team. I mean, again, that team among 5 or 6 others that are that, kind of that.
I think their position as number one in the AP poll now is warranted and
hard to argue against it. Yeah. Did you get eyes on LSU South Carolina?
I was really bummed about this game. I think South Carolina was up 17-0, and then uh, it gets to what 17-10, and then South Carolina breaks a run on the outside or for the quarterback up the middle to go 24-10. And I'm like, all right, they've got a chance to win this game. And LSU just kept chipping away, chipping away, chipping away. And I flipped back right at the end and saw the missed field goal. I mean, you're talking that far
Yeah.
wide, pushed it overtime. I don't know if they would have won in overtime because LSU looked like they had kind of started to gain control of the game. But, I mean, gotta love Beamer ball. So,
Yeah, my heart breaks for him. I feel like something about being a South Carolina fan has got to be rough, where it's like you almost don't even believe when you're up 10 on like up two scores on a major opponent because you've seen this movie so many times. But then you go up three scores and you're like, oh, this time's different, and it
yeah,
just isn't. And I think there were a couple of pretty rough penalty calls in that game. I mean, they had two pick sixes called back. Like,
that's
um,
rough.
yeah. So that's tough on them. I wouldn't consider myself a South Carolina fan, but they do have a great environment at their games, and they always are game to snake bite someone. I probably should have known. Like, all right, that was one of my picks versus the spread. I was like, I think LSU's got this. And by the end of the first quarter, I was like, okay, they're not covering and no, they're almost certainly not going to win this game. But South Carolina is going to South Carolina.
Yep. And that leaves LSU still in the. I mean, if LSU loses that game, I think you're out of the playoff hunt to some degree because you're not going to win the SEC. I mean, you got a harder schedule than Reigns, but they're still in it
A
now.
loss to USC. I think you're right. I think that one was, I think, really important for Brian Kelly here in year three to get that one. Mostly, like, again, like, not that it's like this big achievement so much as we avoided disaster.
Right.
Um, so we'll have to see. I mean, I
Also,
think,
I would have loved to see double losses to USC's. Like that would be a fun way to start.
yeah, yeah. There's got to be someone that had some things queued up if that was to happen, on Twitter. Didn't end up happening. A couple of other games that I just want to recap real quick, and we'll move on. But Washington State. You know annoyed that this is on Peacock. I didn't watch a down of this game. I was following it pretty closely on just on like the GameCast or whatever that ESPN does. So I was following it pretty closely. I'm a Huskies fan. I lean Huskies in that rivalry for sure. But I kind of the sentimental part of me that's doesn't like some of the changes within the sport is kind of was really hoping that both Oregon State and Washington State would pull off the wins against their rivals who sort of ditched them for the Big Ten. Obviously, we only split that 1-1. In fact, Oregon looked as better than they have all year, but it was kind of nice for Washington State to get that win in that manner. Just like, oh well, you think you won the breakup, huh? And win it in Seattle. I know it wasn't at Husky Stadium; it was at where the Seahawks play, Lumen Field. But yeah, I just wanted to call that out. John Mateer, QB for Washington State. He's fun to watch, and they have a tough schedule as far as like Mountain West schedules go. They face Boise State in a couple of weeks, and now UNLV I think they also have on the schedule. So they face sort of a who's who of G5 teams, but they might be in that conversation for an at-large berth. I guess it's the five conference champs, so maybe they're not since they're not in a league. That would suck, though. Oh, that would be bad. But it's probably going to happen if they were to win out. They'd probably be like, "Oh, sorry, you're not in a conference," which would be dumb. But yeah, I just wanted to call that out. That hey, good on Washington State. I think that they're yeah poised to be a leader in that new look Pac-12. I think that they've circled the wagons there, and things are looking up in Pullman.
Yeah.
A
So
couple others I oh
I
go
caught the
sorry.
highlights on that game, and one of the things that and I went back and read up stuff. One of the things that stood out to me is Washington's inability to put in touchdowns. I mean, you get to the 26-yard line, field goal. You get to the 22-yard line, field goal. You get to the what is it? The 7-yard line, field goal, and then you get to the one at the end of the game, and you can't get in to win the game. So like, you go within 27 yards of the end zone, and you come away with 9 points. That's 4 times you go. Like, that's rough.
And that goes, actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because again, I have not seen a down of that game, so I'm glad that you brought that up and added some context for me. But that's the one thing, if I'm a Washington fan, that concerns me about Jed Fish, is that he's more conservative when it comes to like kick a field goal or punt the ball than I'd like my head coach to be. I want him to be more aggressive. I'm not saying he has to go for it on fourth down in every one of those situations. And again, I don't know what the downs and distances were. It may have been like 4th and 17 or something. Like, you feel free to look that up. We don't have to go through
Yeah,
that. So I'm just saying I'm missing context there. So maybe there's some of that.
yeah.
But we've seen this historically now a couple of years. There's ample opportunities last year when he was at Arizona to beat USC on the road in LA by going for it, going for two in the first overtime, not settling for a couple of field goals, being a little bit more aggressive with those fourth down punt or go for it decisions. And I feel like that's one area of the game that he doesn't have mastered, right? He's a pretty good recruiter. I think he punches above his weight in the recruiting game. I think he's an offensive guy and can put together a strong offensive game plan. That's just the one knock that I have on him, is like, hey, he's a little conservative for my taste.
All field goals were 4th and 5 or more. So
Okay, so yeah, maybe you live with that. I think at one point you just say, hey, look, why don't we go for it? Let's just see if we can get one. I'm not
yeah.
saying every single one of those is a go decision, but it's easy for me, to armchair quarterback it with no pressure on me and no expectations. But that's my one criticism, I would say, of Jed Fish, is that he's maybe a touch conservative for my taste when it comes to those types of
Well,
game decisions.
and we are Jed Fish fans, so
Yeah, we are. We criticize because we care. Uh, um,
I got a lot to tell you, Steve.
I
By the way,
oh
criticize because I care. Just kidding.
oh, gotcha. Yeah, yeah. We'll push pause on the record and you can fill me in.
All right.
But yeah, a couple others I wanted to just touch on. Indiana versus UCLA. Man, Kurt Signetti is he. I think Indiana's future at football has never been brighter. I think it's really exciting what they're doing on the field. They can pull off the flip of Julian Lewis. Who knows? I don't know if they'll be able to do that, but it's very interesting. And if you're an Indiana booster, you have to be like, okay, look what he's doing with the ingredients that some of it he brought with him from JMU, but if nothing else, it's he can go back to those boosters and say, now look what I could do with a superstar quarterback. We're working with a guy who had pretty good potential, but has dealt with injuries basically his entire career in Curtis Rourke. Give me the resources to bring in Julian Lewis, and of course his quarterbacks coach is gosh, I'm blanking on his name. Tino Sunseri, that's it. Former QB at Pitt, Sal Sunseri's son. Was the first coach that ever introduced had a relationship with Julian Lewis dating back to his time as a graduate assistant at Florida State. I'm just saying, keep an eye on it. I don't have any insider intel there, but I mean, how could you not see, like, man, look what Indiana's doing? They were bad. They were bad, and now they're 3-0. I think that they're a 7, maybe an 8-win team. I think we will regret not drafting them in our win totals draft.
There you go.
Which is wild in one year. And then we already talked about this one, UCF TCU. That was a fun game. If you haven't had a chance to see it, go watch the highlights. It's a blast. There's all kinds of wild plays in it. TCU, they put up points, they give up points. UCF's the exact same way. And so if you're a fan of high flying circus acts of football games, that's the type of game for you. All right, I'm good to pivot. I know that you threw on some other things you wanted to kind of talk through. Lead us into it.
I would just go one more game. The Texas A&M
Sure,
Gators
yeah.
game. You have Connor Wegman is hurt, and they start Marcel Reed. The freshman goes 11 for 17 with 2 touchdowns, and they dominate Florida. It doesn't help that Florida, throws 3 interceptions, one for a touchdown, between DJ Lagway and Graham Mertz. But oh man, the fact that DJ Lagway looked as rough as he did. I mean, he threw 13 passes and had 2 interceptions. Yeah, like people talk about Napier's going to be fired at any moment. We all expected this, right? We expected them to lose these games. Like they are not losing anything that we didn't expect them to lose. So I'm kind of like, is this a Napier issue? I just think you just got to go to DJ Lagway, start getting him some experience, get the fan base a little bit excited of him. Even if he's throwing interceptions, you're showing that you're going to willing to do this. The same thing with Florida State. You got to go get somebody that's new and
Build for
play.
the future. Yep.
Yep, and
Yeah.
just you're not going to make a bowl game. The state of the big three in Florida is kind of interesting. Two of them are not going to make bowl games, and you just need to play for the future and get excited about. Hey, we're going to work on helping out our younger guys.
Yeah, get them some reps. That's interesting. The bigger takeaway I had from this is like, hey, look, the offense of Texas A&M has a pulse when there's a guy who can actually run. Um, so Marcel Reed might be a little bit of a blessing in disguise for Texas A&M.
Yeah, I don't think they go back. Honestly, why would you go
No,
back? So
I'm right there with you. I think that one's to me is the bigger takeaway. But yeah, I think yeah, Florida. You said the big three in the state, like UCF might be part of the big two in the state at this point.
well, you might be part of something like that. I'm kidding, but like,
Yeah, well, and this week we get USF Miami, so they'll get their chance to throw their hat in the ring.
that's true.
Yeah. Anyway, I think that satisfies for me for a week 2 recap. I know that we had a couple of other things we wanted to tackle.
Yeah, I just want to talk about like what teams do you think you know who they are, and like they're good teams, you know who they are, and then what teams do you think you need to see a little bit more of? Like, I don't know. I'll go first with what teams I know who they are. Like, I know Texas is a good team. I know
Agreed.
Tennessee is a good team. I'm excited to see how those go. At the beginning of the year, I told you I was like, honestly, if I was to put any money on teams, I'd put money on Texas, Ohio State, and Georgia. I'm feeling pretty good about that. Ohio State kind of took a little while to wake up against Akron 2 weeks ago, but they ended up being okay and blowing them out. Um, I think like those are teams like that I know are good. I still want to see some more from them. I want to see them play better teams, but yeah, Tennessee, Texas, they've won like they're expected to. Even Ole Miss a little bit has won like it's been expected to. I know these are good teams. Who would you say that you think are good teams?
Yeah, you covered most of the ones that I would say. Like I feel like I still need to see more from Ohio State, mainly because I have not watched a down of Ohio State yet, just because I don't know if I really felt compelled to watch any of them. I need to see more from Oregon. I think that they took a step in the right direction this last week, but it's hard to ignore, a really close game against Idaho deep into the fourth quarter. Boise State again on that game tying touchdown. Like I don't know if you've seen the still shots of the Oregon guy throwing the ball behind his back. Like it's close. If they'd have caught that in real time, who knows what the result is there. So I need to see more from them. You're absolutely right on the ones you're confident in. Ole Miss, I was not a buyer on them this year. I have changed my mind pretty significantly on Ole Miss, and maybe I'm just feeding into that. It feels like every year they kind of start really hot and they win a bunch of like 30, 40 point, have some really impressive victories. I think the way that they're winning feels different this year. Feels a little bit more dominant. Feels like that's a team on a mission. Um, so yeah, I feel like that's a really good team. Tennessee, I feel like I've been on that one, so it's good to see that just confirmed. Very much looking forward to seeing what that looks like in Norman, Oklahoma this weekend. A couple of others, yeah. I think Georgia is one that I might want to still see a little bit more from. I mean, they've had both sides of the spectrum, right? They really struggled on the road against Kentucky, and Kentucky was coming off of a pretty abysmal performance against South Carolina. I think in light of what we've seen this most recent week, maybe some of that is a little bit instructive that South Carolina is pretty formidable when it comes to their defensive front. and the challenges that they can present, even to a really good offensive line at LSU. Um, so maybe that changes my mind a little bit there. But I let's see who else. I'm trying to run through who else I feel.
I throw one more on there. Miami is a team I feel like I know who they are. I think they are a
Yeah,
good team, and
yeah.
that
Okay, I agree.
and I'll be honest, I think Clemson's probably a chance to be. It was pretty good. I think we probably do need to see a little bit more from them because I mean you had the struggle with Georgia, and then you had the offense's explosion that they were kind of excited about. I like to see a little bit more from them, but I think that that's going to be a good team. Um, if I'm going to go through a few more teams that I want to see a
Sure.
little bit
Yeah.
more from, um, I know we haven't seen enough from Penn State. You had the big win against West Virginia, the struggle a little bit with Bowling Green. You get Kent State. We have a little bit while before we start. We play Illinois a little bit in 2 weeks or so, but you don't play USC or the bigger teams until later on. The other team I'm interested to see is Kansas State. I get they played Arizona. I get Arizona was ranked high. I don't think highly of Arizona, to be honest, and I didn't think that they're that good a team. And you flirted with Tulane, so I'm interested to see what they do in the next 2 weeks. You go to BYU. You're only favored by 6.5, which that line seems a little surprising to me. And then you play Oklahoma State and Colorado like after that. So we might get to see who they are a little bit.
Yeah. You nailed that one. I think. Yeah. I'm right there with you. I think there's a reason I didn't draft Arizona, even though I love some of the players on that team. It's because I think
Yep.
there's holes on that team, and they clearly have shown up, right? Um, and yeah, so that win didn't really, you know,
Yeah.
didn't
Tell
really
me.
move the needle for me. Like 31-7, and it still didn't feel like it was that dominant of a win. Like if
Yeah.
that makes sense. But I'm right there with you. The line is interesting, but I also think this is. I mean, we can talk about like matchups and stuff later, but like BYU might have something for them. I think it's a matchup thing there where their BYU's defensive line is not. I don't know if I'd call it good, but it's way better than I thought it would be. And
Yeah. Pass rush is good.
their linebacker room is like five deep of guys that I wish were on Florida State. Which
They're
that's
very
usually
well equipped.
my measure of like what I want. For BYU is like, would I take that guy on FSU? And that's kind of how my wife and I talk through the BYU's roster. And for some of the flaws that they have offensively and in certain skill areas, like that linebacker room, I like a lot. And so it's like, unless Kansas State has a really good day throwing the football, it that could be interesting. It could.
Well, yeah, I
It's a
think you have
late night game. It's up at altitude, like all the soft factors. But I can see a world now, like whereas like in the off season, I had to tell my wife like, look, I don't feel very good about this team. Like if I squint and like give every benefit of the doubt to that team, maybe they make a bowl. Now I'm like, okay, they have a pretty good shot at making a bowl at this point. Like and you're going to have to clip one of those favorites in the league because they face most of them. But maybe Kansas State is the one they get.
yeah.
Sorry, I turned that into like a game preview, but I agree. I need to see more from K State, and yeah, I think we're going to get it in these next couple of weeks with the way their
No,
schedule
I'm
lays out.
excited for that game, to be honest. So,
Same.
any other teams you want to see more of? Oh, Nebraska. I want to see more of Dylan Raiola and see him play a decent team. Not that Colorado isn't a decent team, but a little bit better even. So,
Yeah, I think you might get that this week. I'm excited to see them play Illinois.
yeah.
People have been talking like, hey, with the way their schedule sets up, they could be undefeated facing Ohio State, and that would be intriguing. Uh, Tip my cap to Matt Rule. I think man's a program builder. When he went to Carolina, like to the Panthers in the NFL, I just like, I don't know if this plays right, just because I don't know if that's who he is. That guy is a college football coach, and he's a very very good one.
It's like Shiano when he went to the Buccaneers.
Yeah, and goes back to Rutgers and does not miss a beat, and has
Yeah.
built that program up. Like there are some guys that are built for the college game, and the funny thing is, like neither of those are what I consider to be like ace recruiters, right?
No.
They're developers. They evaluate talent well. They build a locker room and a culture that wins. So no, I'm right there with you.
All right. Depending on the week, or the team you're 2 or 3 games in. We've seen some actual play time. If you were, without looking at it, if you were to pick who the Heisman favorite you think isn't based off of odds, who would you select?
Oh, I have not looked at the odds.
As I'm saying,
Cam Ward's got to be up there, right?
he's number one.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say that's the one where like halfway into that Florida game, I was like, I made a mistake when I called for Nico. I should have gone with Cam Ward. I didn't even mention Cam Ward, and I should have. I feel like I drafted them number one overall, or not number one overall, but my first pick in our win totals draft primarily because of Cam Ward. Um, yeah, and he has the schedule to just continue to put up very gaudy numbers. He's going to bring the U back at this point, and who challenges them? I don't see it.
The thing that we're seeing, not seeing that he did previously, is he's not throwing the interceptions he's thrown previously, and that's the crazy part. It's like, and he's got, I mean, Restrepo in the middle has just been a safety blanket for him, so that helps a ton.
Yeah.
If I'm looking at odds right now, so you have Cam Ward plus 550, might be some time to put some money on that. Jackson Dart's plus 700. Jalen Milrow, which I don't think any of us would have had, is at plus 700. And then Nico is at plus 850. And then you have Dylan Gabriel at plus 900. With
That's
Carson.
a lifetime achievement award. I don't feel like he's done.
Nah.
Done really anything to impress me this year.
Yeah, then you have Carson Beck, Will Howard, Quinn Ewers, Miller Moss, kind of all at plus 1,200 to plus 2,000. And the surprising one that's in there is Ashton Gianti. He's the first non QB at plus 2,000. Travis Hunter is at plus 3,500. I'll be honest, that I want to put money on that potentially, because like, he is the best player, and if they can win some games, like, you have a kid that's winning, that has 13 completions and 2 touchdowns and an interception. Like, we're putting up Charles Woodson numbers, and if they were playing for a national title or anything significance, that he's a lock.
Yeah, he's playing almost every snap on both sides of the ball and playing at an insane level on both sides of the ball. Like, how he does it, I have no idea. It's very, very impressive, and the shame is that he's on a team that you said if they can win games, I don't know that they can at this point. Like, I thought, and I don't know if we really talked about them much in the preseason. I thought, like, okay, maybe 6 or 7 games, like, not a great season. I'm concerned. Like,
yeah.
I don't know how much. I mean, I need to look at their schedule again too, but I don't know. I don't know how long it's going to last there. And for him, I would not blame him. I'm not telling him to shut it down because I want to keep watching him, but I wouldn't blame him if he did. Said, you know what? I've put plenty on tape for the next level. I don't need to do this. I don't want it, but I could see it.
Yeah. I don't know. That's I was finding interesting. We starting to get a little bit of a picture, and the big picture that happened preseason is flipped on its head pretty quickly. I mean, you had Carson Beck and you had Quinn Ewers and you had Nico, who were kind of like the top 3, and now they're still in the top 8, but they aren't the favorites even. So
yeah, it moves quickly. And for any of those individuals, of course, there's plenty of time to make it up. But
yes.
But yeah, it's hard to see Miami. I mean, I can't think. I don't have their schedule right in front of me. But it's like, who are they losing to? They're not losing to Virginia Tech. They're not losing to Florida State. They're not losing. Who are the other teams that I had? I'm like, oh, maybe this one, maybe that one.
Do they don't even play Clemson this year? Do they?
They don't. They have a crazy light schedule.
Yeah. USF, Vodtech, California, Louisville. They're ranked number 19. Okay. We'll see if that's an okay team or not.
Yeah, Louisville, I think, is a tough game on the road. Yeah. All right. Florida State's not beating Miami. Miami's going to beat them by 30 points.
Georgia Tech, Wake Forest, and then Syracuse. So maybe they drop one, but that team looks. I mean, with Notre Dame dropping to NIU, you might be able to get 2 ACC teams in, and if Miami drops the championship, I'm just saying if they dropped it to Clemson, they probably still.
Yeah, I think it has to be Clemson has to go undefeated the rest of the way if you're going to get 2 in, and those 2 play in the title game, and
yeah. Well, I mean,
one gets the
even if even if Miami goes undefeated and they lose in the title game, I don't care who it is too. I mean, they probably
That's true. That's true. They would probably still get in, I would think.
yeah.
Yeah, so you're right. I think the ACC's only hope is for an undefeated team, Miami specifically, to go to the title game and then lose it, right? Like outside of that, like if Miami wins the ACC, it's a one-bid league, I think at this point. Like
Yeah, depending on how Clemson does. I mean, Clemson lost their one game to Georgia, but if they can run the table from there, I mean, and look,
yeah, that's probably true. But I think the problem then you run into is if they lose to Miami in the title game
they have 2
and
losses.
it's not close,
Yeah.
then the committee might say, "Hey, we've seen enough. They played 2 playoff teams, and neither one was particularly competitive." So,
Sure.
I mean, there's a chance there, but
I mean,
I'm
if I'm a playoff committee member, I go, well, that was week 1. Like, if you played Georgia week 1, I'm not going to hold that against you that you couldn't beat Georgia in week 1. You haven't even figured out everything else. So,
yeah.
but
fair.
we also know the playoff committee hasn't made sense most years. So who knows?
There's that too, definitely. Anything before we spin forward to week 3? Oh, win totals.
Oh yeah.
I have the win totals draft update.
Oh.
Let me share my screen here. In just a second. Okay.
This makes for great airtime, everyone.
I know. Sorry for the dead air. Here we are. All right. So finally got it updated. Tip my cap to Mark for making this actually really easy. Once I tried, once I gave it an effort to update this.
Yeah, it's not hard.
So, and it's excellent. But here's where we stand in after week 3. Corey, you have 19 wins. I have 25 wins. Mark has 20 wins. Brian has 26 wins. Now, as far as games left, Mark and I have the fewest games left with 91 remaining. You have one more game than that. And then Brian, even though he has 26 wins, also has one more game left than you and 2 more than than me and Mark. So Brian's off to the races. At a glance, looking at his team, that Ole Miss team looks like it's going to be a pretty good value pick. Penn State, I think we still need to see that. I think we talked about that. Oregon, I think they're rounding into form, getting their act together. The big thing that he has going for him is Memphis looks sharp. Toledo blasting Mississippi State. Whoa.
Like 41-17.
Yeah, they murdered them.
And they got paid $1 million.
Starkville. Yeah, know? In Starkville. Like
kind of like Memphis. They got paid $1 million too.
Yeah. So he's got, I think, a good collection of the G5 teams that I think are particularly influential. Mark taking Florida State in the second round. That's going to be an anchor. That'll weigh you down. It'll be a problem. Outside of that, Georgia looks good. Texas looks good. Boise State, good. LSU, I've got some questions about. Iowa, I have some questions about. SMU, I think will be a problem for him too. But it hasn't really surfaced yet. Arizona, I left them on the board, I think, for a reason, and I think we're going to start seeing that too. So I think Mark has some problems that are going to surface here in a little bit. Maybe they aren't quite fully surfaced, but I feel pretty good about where I'm at too. Like I feel like Miami, I feel great about. Utah. Again, it's Cam Rising dependent, but so far so good. Bama, I think, is rounding into form. Tennessee, I feel really good about it. A&M, Texas State, I knew that they were probably going to lose that Arizona State game. I mean, again, halfway through that game, I was like over the moon. I was like, oh my gosh, we're going to get the one Power 5 win on the slate, and then they just have to deal with the Sun Belt. USF, we'll see. I might have been a little aggressive on that pick.
That one I would have thought you were a little bit, but you also get a loss this week with USF and Miami playing each other.
Yeah, between the two of them, one of them goes down. USC looks like a value pick toward the end of the draft. Yeah. Take me through your team. Sorry, I just stole your thunder and went through both both the people who are absent and then my own.
I'm not offended. If you look at my team, Ohio State, I think that's a good one. Liberty's good. Clemson, I expected the Georgia loss, but I think that's going to be okay. Notre Dame, we had the stumble with Texas A&M, but they recovered a little bit. I think we can continue to see. I think they get 8 wins out of them. Kansas State, I think that's going to be a good pick, but we'll have to see. I think I can get 8 wins. My goal is like not to hit the bottom. That's what the thing is. NC State, they've not looked nearly as good as I hoped they would be. I'm going to get a loss either way because they play Clemson this week, so I'm kind of whatever about that game. UTSA and Kansas are where I think my biggest issues are, and maybe Auburn. I might go 6-7 wins with those teams at most, and that I need to be a little bit higher. I think I was first the first year and second the second year. I don't want to be continuing in this downward trend, but it's not looking good right now. I'm in last, but I do think there's a chance I can catch Mark, depending.
Yeah, I think Mark has problems, and they just haven't fully revealed
Yeah,
themselves
if
yet.
Florida State goes on without a win the whole year, there's going to be some issues.
Yeah. Well. But yeah, that's where we're at. I think, yeah, it's always fun to see us how we do, and I think collectively, like we've over the years that we've done this, we've gotten better. I don't know, there may be some regression to the mean here this year. We'll have to see, but the first year, I think all of us individually got better from year two to year or from year one to year two, and then collectively we also made that leap. So let's see if we can build on it. Brian continues to just a good rule of thumb for our friends listening. If Brian has drafted them, you probably want to take the over on their win totals heading into the season because they're just going to get the over.
Yeah, he was
And across the
the
10,
first
like
year.
you're certainly gonna come out positive.
Yeah, he was second the first year and first the second year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you can give him a run for your money, but I think it's a clear first and second. You guys have stronger teams, so
Yeah. I mean, at least thus far, right? But
no.
we'll see.
Even looking at how good the teams are and who we picked, yeah, I think you guys are gonna. It's gonna be a fight between you two and a fight between me and Mark, who has to, do the Sprite challenge or whatever it is.
Oh yeah, excellent. All right, sorry. Yeah, quick win totals update. After that, I don't know if there's anything else that we wanted to tackle before we kind of look forward to week. What is it? Week 4 now.
Yeah, week 4.
All right, cool. Well, again, I don't have like a ton of like big breakdowns or anything. I just want to maybe talk through a couple of games that um, that are intriguing. Yeah, NC State, Clemson. Clemson's going to win this game, right? Like, I don't know if we even really need to go to. Yeah, okay, all right. Well, so yeah, I think that one's they're at home. It looks like according to ESPN Bet, which I feel like their odds are always a little bit different than the rest of the market. I don't know why, but yeah, like 20-point favorite. Yeah, I don't know if that one's really one that's going to hold my attention. Oh yeah, we should talk about North Carolina is like a sneaky 3-0, and I know that they lost their QB. I'm not sure it totally matters though. Like North Carolina's got a pretty easy schedule.
Yeah,
Sorry,
and
what?
I said it was a blessing in disguise.
Yeah,
that they lost
that's
their
fair. So
quarterback.
they played JMU this week. They're at Duke. They're versus Pitt, versus Georgia Tech, at Virginia, at Florida State, home against Wake Forest, at Boston College, home against NC State. There's not a game there where it's like, oh, they're definitely losing that game. Like,
Right. Exactly.
So that one's interesting. Oh, did you have West Virginia going 1-2 in the non-conference?
No, I
I did
didn't.
not. They lose the backyard brawl and the Penn State. I guess it's kind of a tougher non-conference.
We didn't even touch the backyard
around.
brawl this week. Did you see
We
that game
didn't.
at all?
So I haven't. Obviously I know the result. I know the 14-point comeback in the second, in the fourth quarter.
3 minutes left. It's insane.
Man, oof, gut punch to the Mountaineers.
Yeah,
brutal. But yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen much of them playing this year, which is kind of odd because like last year I tuned in quite a bit. They're a fun team to watch, and I imagine they're probably still fun, if maybe a little infuriating of a team to watch for Mountaineers fans. But C.J. Donaldson, that guy could play for me. Like, man, he's good back. Um, what are the other big games this week? Oh, USC Michigan.
USC Michigan, yeah, that'll be interesting. I don't think it's
I
gonna be overly close, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm not sure it
I
is
don't know.
either.
Actually,
Like
I have no
what?
idea what to think about the game because you have UNC's, you have USC. Can they continue to tackle? Can they continue to do well? But then Michigan's got a defense. But I'm loving Moss as that quarterback. He's been very, very impressive to me. So if he can outscore his defense, I think they're okay.
Yeah, hmm. I wonder some of those same things. I just wonder like how different is the not different in terms of schematically, but just in terms of a talent and ability. Like, does USC present that big? Is it that big of a talent drop off from them to Texas when it comes to the air attack? I'm not sure it is.
I don't think
Like,
there is. Yeah, I like they've got good
yeah,
receivers. Yeah, they're
I think
favored
that
in the big house by 5.5, 6, depending on who you think you look at.
yeah,
That's
which is kind of where I think what was Texas, a 9.5 point favorite, something
they were
like that.
7, I think.
Was it 7.5? I think that was one of
Yeah.
your yeah one of
Yeah,
your
I was
bets
like, they're
that
gonna
we
blow them
put.
out of the water.
Yeah, and you
This one
nailed
I
that.
wouldn't
So
take a pick. So
yeah, I'm not taking a pick on that game either, but like yeah, my gut says USC.
the thing that I'm worried about is Texas had a defense. USC, we'll see if their defense doesn't break because they're a bend don't
Mm-hmm.
break. But when you have a running team like Michigan is,
Who might be leaning into it more
like
that Orgy is playing, that
yeah,
Alex Orgy is quarterback and is like, all right, we're just gonna triple option this thing and
yeah,
play defense.
and that'll make it a game that I would want to bet on because it's going to slug it down a little bit. Yeah,
Yeah, just though I think we even said this like Michigan's mo has got to be like drag teams into the muck, take them into deep water, make it a sloppy game, make it a slugfest, and see if at the end you can make just enough plays to win.
well, and you're a physical team. You're not afraid to fight people, and so like when it gets messy, a lot of times the more physical team wins. So
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I'm trying to figure out like,
Tennessee
sorry,
Oklahoma is the only other good game I think of
oh
this week.
yes,
Sorry.
very exciting to see what Venables cooks up to face a pretty formidable Tennessee offense. I mean, I'm a storylines guy. You guys, you know that, right? Like, so Heupel going back after he was fired 10 years ago. You know he's motivated. You know he wants to just rub it in their faces.
Does he do an
Uh,
onside kick up 30-0 again? I have no idea.
uh, I mean, if he's up 30-0 in the first quarter, first half, like
Yeah, they're up 65
I
nothing.
could see it. I could see it. That's absurd. But I couldn't see that being the score. I could see him onside kick. I get the sense that he's pretty petty about what happened. That it's he's not over it. And hey, hold that ship. I'm fine with that. Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, I, I got the balls in that one. I bet against Oklahoma a few times to my detriment. Um, or like bet, I should say. I picked against Oklahoma to my detriment. I feel pretty good about that one. Oh, Georgia Tech, Louisville.
Yeah, I
Louisville's
haven't
at
really
home, ten
kept
and a half
eyes
point
on
spread.
Louisville this year, so I don't really
I
know.
haven't either. That's the part. That's the thing is like they haven't played anyone that's really like okay. Does this really move the needle? Because they played Austin P and then Jacksonville State. Um, but they won both games again, 62-0 against Austin P. Doesn't move the needle for me. Jacks, Jacksonville State 49-14. Okay, like that's a pretty significant margin. Like I don't know, like Louisville maybe is a wild card in the ACC that maybe we haven't fully counted. Like maybe we shouldn't fully count them out. Like if they're if they're kind of in that same tier, maybe they can. If you've got like a big three, if I can say those words with like Clemson, Louisville, and Miami, maybe you get maybe you're more of a two-bid league than I suspected that I said earlier. But um, yeah, outside of that, I don't know if there's any other like Utah Oklahoma State. Let's talk about this game for a
Yeah,
minute.
that was be the
Uh,
other one I forgot. Yeah,
yeah, Rising's back. That's
we
good.
talked
I
about this
like.
earlier today that the line has swung, almost 5 points from Oklahoma State to Utah. So
Which
that's
is
kind of
surprising to
crazy.
me because I think they had already announced that he would be back for this game well before lines came out on Sunday. So I remember seeing this and having it like earmarked and being like, oh, that'll be one of my picks, like Oklahoma State's favorite at home by 2.5 for Utah. I think that's wrong. I think the wrong team's favored. Um, and with that line move, I guess when they confirmed that Rising would be playing, like that's what made the move. But I'm pretty sure they had already said like, hey, we expect him back against Oklahoma State, and I think that was even kind of middle of last week. So I'm a little surprised that happened, but I think it's the right adjustment. That's a fun game just because it's two teams that Oklahoma State prides themselves on running football. All their returning offensive linemen from last year, but I mean they have looked a little shaky in stretches. Certainly against Arkansas,
Yeah,
they had some stretches there where it didn't look very good. Um, And yeah, you're going to have to be sharp right from the word go against Utah because Utah's, I think, a fairly complete team. Again, they're maybe not top tier talent across the board, but there's no like glaring holes on their roster, maybe in the defensive secondary ever so slightly. But I don't know if Oklahoma State's the team. More specifically, I don't know if they have the quarterback to really make that to pay that off, right? To punish Utah
I
for
don't
maybe
know. I
being.
mean, he has thrown for like 800 yards this year already.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. Bowman to me
I'll let you in
is
on one
what
of
he
my
is.
my picks. I'm picking
Yeah,
Oklahoma State to win that game.
really.
Yeah,
Oh, just straight money lining, or you
I'll
just
take the two and a
you'll
half,
take the
of
point,
course.
take the points. Okay, all
Yeah,
right. Just
but
curious.
I think Oklahoma State wins that one.
Okay. Um, other games that I'll be paying attention to, like Miami, South Florida. I'll be interested to see if South Florida can keep it close, especially knowing that they played Alabama really tough on the road. This is like the home game of the century for South Florida because they're getting a top 10 Miami team. Um, some familiarity between those staffs. I don't know if you know some of the. So the running backs coach at Miami was at USF. He was their running backs coach last year. Defensive backs coach for USF, Demarcus Van Dyke, was on Miami staff for I think 4 or 5 years. After their defensive backs coach, whose name Jamal Adai, went to the NFL. He came from Georgia, was at Miami for 2 years, and went to the Buffalo Bills, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but is in the NFL now. Everyone thought, oh, they're just going to promote Demarcus Van Dyke, and they didn't. And I think there were some sour grapes about it from him. Just like, man, he was the one who led their recruiting efforts on Cormani McLean, which, hey, bullet dodged. Um, and so I think that there's some fun storylines there. Again, I don't really believe South Florida can keep it close at this point. Leading into the year, I thought, okay, between Alabama and Miami, Alex Golish, the USF head coach, is going to be scheming for one of those extra in the offseason. Basically, like, here's my audition for a job, like maybe the Florida job, who knows? Um, and so like I felt like he did a lot in that Bama game where it's like, all right, they played real close. They had opportunities in that game they didn't take full advantage of. Can they get up off the mat? I know that they've had a week in between where they played Southern Miss, but do they have another one of those really really sensational efforts where everyone's playing? Or I shouldn't say everyone because there's certainly some mistakes there, but like their defensive line and their offensive line was able to move Bama to a degree, right? Like not enough to keep that game close, right? They were scoring with Bama. Do they have another one of those in them? I don't know. That's the part that's exciting for me. So I'll definitely keep an eye out on that game. And there's a reason I drafted them is because I thought, hey, they have two really tough out of conference games that I expect them to lose both. It wouldn't stun me if they maybe snuck up on one of them. But I think them playing Bama so close, I think that will have Miami's attention and saying like, hey, we have to be on our P's and Q's, and we can't just assume that we're going to walk all over this team. So I think them losing close to Bama, and I know that the final score wasn't that close, but it being close within 6 minutes left in the game is enough of a wake up call for Miami to say like, hey, don't sleep through this one. Let's take care of business.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't have any others that I really specifically wanted to get to. I feel like I already said my piece on the Kansas State BYU game. I don't know if you had anything more on that one.
Now let's go to picks.
All right, let's do it. Let's do it. Do you want? I probably shouldn't pull up the picks because it'll spoil them all. I don't even have yours, but a quick recap from last week. Uh, on the week, I was 3-2, so I did not get the under with the Arizona State Texas State under 58.5. I felt like that game was playing out exactly the way I wanted it to in terms of like the totals. Like Texas State in the first quarter had a touchdown drive, but I think it was like 14 plays in like 8 minutes or something. I was like, perfect. Like, yeah, give me 2 or 3 more of those. And if anything, I got lucky that it stayed at 59. Like, I know that it crossed, like, it was under 58.5, and it crossed to 59 with like, I think 10 minutes left. And then the game slowed down like crazy and no one scored. So kind of a bummer there. LSU -7 at South Carolina. We talked about that one already. Alabama -16.5 at Wisconsin. That was a rocking chair game, just super easy. Memphis +6.5 at FSU. Like, yeah, I think that's just going to be an auto play here. And then Texas -34.5 versus UTSA. Of course, they're going to cover that when Texas State the week prior beat UTSA by I think 32 points themselves. So it's like, okay, Texas is significantly better than Texas State. So yeah, that's a recap. On the year, I am now 500 even. So I am. Let me make sure that that's correct. I have these are all the ones that. So I am 10 and 10. So I'm dead even. You are 4-3. So hey, good news. No one's losing. Again, like we don't like factor in some of the like if there's differences in odds. Like we technically, if you were to bet like a 1 unit on each of these, I might still be a little underwater. I don't,
I think so, yeah.
But all that to say, it's just fun. It's fun to pick them and to see what we got. You wanna go first? You want me to go first? Alternate.
I'll go first. I'll do all
right.
mine. All right. Since I wasn't here last week, I didn't make any picks. I'm gonna make up for it, and I'm gonna put a few of them out there. Try and make up and try and catch up with Steve a little bit. This week is the week for the state of Florida. I'm betting on all the Florida teams. Give me UF -6 against Mississippi State. Mississippi State just got plastered by Toledo. UF has the talent there that they should beat this team, and Napier is going to get a win when everybody thinks talking about he's going to lose his job. FSU is only favored by 2.5. To be honest, I'm very surprised. I think Cal should be favored in that game, but I'm going to take FSU. I think Hakeem Williams has a breakout game and is able to score 2 touchdowns for them. And all of a sudden, Florida State's got 2 touchdowns. I mean, that hasn't happened hardly at all. But I think they can win that game, and I think they cover the 2.5. Miami, give me the 16.5 against USF. Your thought process is exactly what I have. Alabama got their attention against USF, and Miami won't hesitate. That Cam Ward-Restrepo combo's looking good for another 2 touchdowns. So there's going to be happy days in the state of Florida this week. But we'll see. If anybody loses, it's Florida State. Yeah, the Noles. But we're going to go say happy days. All right, other games. I was telling Steve I don't pick against dogs very much, but I'm picking Oklahoma State to beat Utah. I'm excited about what the quarterback and the running back bring, the balance that Oklahoma State team has, and I'm interested to see how much Cam Rising isn't hurting, because I mean he constantly is getting hurt, and although Isaac Wilson looked okay, the offense didn't look as good as it could have been. So I'm betting on Cam Rising to get hurt again and having to go back to Isaac Wilson. Give me Missouri -21 against Vandy. That Missouri team hadn't, up until this last week, hadn't allowed a touchdown. They played a little bit tight with Boston College. I think they get their head squared on straight, and they beat Vandy. There were three blown like plays where they just did not cover. So Vandy won't have that same benefit that Boston College has, and Missouri stomps them pretty good. Tennessee, Oklahoma. Give me the Vols -7. Honestly, I think this is going to be a romp. I think Oklahoma has a defense that could potentially give Tennessee a run for their money. But the problem is Tennessee has an offense and a defense, and I think this one starts to get out of hand in the third quarter. Last but not least, I know you voiced a little bit of concern about this Colorado team. Give me Colorado to beat Baylor -2. I think that Shedeur and Travis Hunter combo is going to come up big for them. They came up with 2 touchdowns last week. I think they can come up with another 2 touchdowns this week. And then Travis Hunter, I mean, you get interceptions and touchdowns, you're a great player, and that's all you need. You only need a few good, great players to get wins there. And you're at home. Baylor has to travel to the West. Good luck.
All right. There's a shocking amount of overlap on our picks here. All right. So maybe I'll go with the ones that we have in common first, and Tennessee -7 and Oklahoma. I'm excited to see what Brent Venables cooks up. I'm a big believer in the Vols. I've been that way since day one. Nothing since day one, like since preseason, right? Let's put it that way. Wasn't as big a believer when Jeremy Pruitt was the head coach, but yeah, I think Tennessee. I think Tennessee covers that. It's on the road. It's a juicy game. I'm excited to watch it, but I got Tennessee -7. I have Florida -6 at Mississippi State as well. I think that at some point it just boils down to talent. I know that maybe effort is a question with the Florida Gators at this point. This is one that they can win, should win, and will win by more than 6.
Is this 2 of the 3 worst teams in the SEC, in your opinion? I put Vandy in there.
Vandy's the other one, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, I think it is. Let's see, what else do I have? Oh, the other game that we have in common is Florida State hosting Cal, but I'm on the other side of the line. I've alluded to it a couple times, but just at this point, I'm fading FSU. I like Cal. They've got some pretty good players that I don't think get their due. I saw rumors on Twitter that maybe Jaden Ott is not playing, so that would be a big miss if he's not there. So it's a little bit contingent on it if he plays, but I'm gonna make it an official play just because I don't trust this FSU team as far as I could throw DJU, and he's a big guy. So all right, the couple that I have that are different. ULM, the Warhawks, facing Texas. Arch Manning's first start. Place is going to be packed, I'm sure. Everyone to see him in his first start. I think that they get out to a lead, and then I think they coast. So I think ULM actually covers the 44.5-point spread. I think Texas gets out to a good lead, maybe say 3 or 4 touchdowns, and then they really shut it down. They don't need another injury, even if they're slow playing Ewers back. If they're saying he's week to week, and it's really kind of like, hey, we play ULM and Mississippi State before we really get into the meat of our schedule. Like, you still don't want to afford another injury. I know they've been kind of injured several different positions. But I think, yeah, whoever the walk-on running back is that's, probably now up to second string on the depth chart because of the number of injuries they sustained at that position, expect to get some work. Expect to get a lot of work on Saturday.
Yeah, the over-under on that is about 52.5, so you're looking at like a 49-3 game is what their expectation is. Is that my doing math right?
Maybe like that, yeah.
Yeah, 48-4 to get you the 44.5 or so. Yeah, that's an interesting. Yeah, I don't hate that pick.
Yeah, I don't expect ULM to score a whole bunch. This is more just like Texas gets out to a four touchdown lead and then does whatever they can to bleed the clock and get out of there. My other pick that differs from any of the other games that you're on TCU goes into Gerald Ford Stadium, battle for the Iron Skillet. We don't really talk about it. This is a fun rivalry. I kind of like, yeah, it's I like that there are a few rivalries where like this is their primary rival, but it's due to both where they're at with conferences and how it's. I mean, I say historically, and I wouldn't know past maybe the last 10 years or so, but it's usually been played earlier in the year, at least in the last 10 years. Like again, I don't know if it ever was on like rivalry weekend before that. I am not a historian on this rivalry, but I I like that it's sprinkled in a little bit earlier in the season and that we're able to enjoy it. TCU scores a bunch of points. They don't play great defense, but I think they play some defense. SMU, I don't think is a particularly potent offense just yet. I think now that they've settled on a quarterback, I think it will get better, but I don't think it gets better in week one. Um, I just think TCU is the better team. They're 3-point road favorites. I think they're going to win by more than three. I think they get up off the mat. They had a really crushing defeat. UCF came into town and won in Fort Worth. I think they return the favor with, or they go to their crosstown rivals. They go into Dallas and get that bad taste out of their mouth with a more than 3-point victory at SMU. And those are my picks for this week.
Sweet.
Anything else you got? Parting shots? I don't know if I have any.
Did you have Billy Napier as the first coach fired this year?
No, I did not.
I
Like I thought the losses would pile up, but I kind of thought they would. Yeah. But we'll see.
And can you fire him after he beats Mississippi State? Like,
I don't know. I was listening to someone else who said, like, what's the advantage in firing a guy right now? Like, does that just give your team more time to shop the portal? Like, so there may be a little bit more strategy in keeping him around longer. So, or keeping anyone for that matter. But yeah, he's gonna be one of them. It looks like all signs point to it.
I I'm not a Florida fan, right? I'm a Florida State fan, but I still think this is the wrong call to fire him. Like you just have this is like it's kind of like Florida State right now. It's a mixed bag of total too many issues, and I wouldn't put it on Napier. Just like I mean, you have an incredibly hard schedule. You also have a pretty rough offensive line, but you have incredible recruits coming in. And if you are willing to wait 1 or 2 years, I think this flips pretty quickly. But I don't think they're going to willing to wait. With Florida State, I mean, you just invested $10 million in Norvell. You're not going to
in like 8 years. So yeah, he's there for a good long while. I think.
And also the understanding is, okay, you missed with DJU, and you need to pick up a little bit with your receivers. But
yeah, don't miss again, and maybe shake up the staff some.
Yeah, there'll be firings by the end of this year.
But yeah, no, I think that's fair. It is interesting to like look at the patience versus lack of patience. You know, Dabo Swinney was very close to getting fired, and then goes on this crazy run. I do see what you're saying with the recruiting picking up for Florida. My question is, does it have staying power now that the Sharks are in, there's blood in the water?
I mean, everybody expected this to be a 4-win team. Why are we pretending like he's doing terrible by potentially winning 4 wins?
Well, I'm, it's set at 4.5, right? So 4 or 5. But also, I think of the games where it's like, okay, if we can steal one to make a bowl, you've now lost 2 of those, right?
Do you really think you'd steal one against Miami or Texas A&M? Like,
I think Texas A&M was gettable. Yeah, like I think that, and I would say like, look, I mean, Miami entered that game as a 2-point favorite. Like they thought those teams were close. Now they were wrong. Like,
I mean, like preseason's preseason, but yeah.
But that's what you're saying, right? Like it's like they were 4.5 point. They were like 4.5 win team, but I think to fans it's like, hey, 4.5 wins might be the Vegas expectations, but the internal expectations seem to be much higher. And not just saying for fans, I'm saying for like people in that building.
Yeah, I did hear the same thing. So
so now that you have 2, like what maybe someone from the outside looking in would say are coin toss games, and both you've been on the wrong end of. there's some beatdowns probably to come, right? Like Georgia, Texas. They play Texas, is that right? I'm going to get this all
They do
mixed
play
up.
Texas. You play Georgia, you play
LSU.
Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, and Florida State at the end.
Oh, well, that Florida
That's
State
your
game they
November
can win.
schedule.
Yeah,
You have
they'll end on a high note. They'll beat the Knowles. Like,
yeah. I mean, you have Mississippi State, you have UCF, and
oh,
Tennessee.
UCF will beat them.
So
UCF is going to beat them. Like
so
they will be motivated for that game. Like
you're
no
saying
one's
that this is
business.
a 3-win team then? Because you're thinking basically a win against Mississippi State, maybe a win
Mississippi
against
State.
Kentucky and Florida State.
Yeah, yeah. I say 3.
Yeah. I wouldn't fire him still. I'm like, listen, that's kind of be expected. You have just a brutal schedule. So
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think you got to make changes. I'm right there with you that sometimes they make them too quickly. This one's like, man, he's overturning the roster, but what gives you faith that he can win with better players? Like in games in the last 2 years, they've had better players than teams and they've lost to. Like,
and that's the one thing that would give me pauses. And I don't have insight into the disorganization within the organization, but I've heard that there's disorganization similar to
I mean, I think you can just see it sometimes where it's like, oh, we're trotting out 12 people onto the field again, or 10. Like, I just feel like some of the more basic things where it's like, hey, this one staffer, his paid $35K a year, his only job is like when we trot our players out there is to count to 11. And if we don't have 11, get on the headset. We got 12 or we have 10. Like, that to me is really simple. Like, anyway, we ran a lot longer this time than I thought we would. It was kind of a good little early season check in on some of those like higher level conversations, though.
Yeah, if we need to, we can cut it with the Heisman stuff.
No, it's staying in. It's all staying in. We're gonna wrap it here unless you have anything else.
Nah.
All right. Well, if you made it this deep, we sure appreciate it. Thanks for watching and liking and sharing and subscribing. And please feel free to interact with us. Let us know what you think. Let us know where we're wrong because we are constantly wrong and sometimes constantly right. Again, I'm straddling the fence here with my 10 and 10 picks, so I'm leaning on that. I'm just as right as I am wrong, at least to this point. But I appreciate it, everyone, and we'll see you next week.